we're going to kind of duplicate it. It won't be identical, but you guys get the gist. So it'll have the 2-row channels, right? It'll have the stones on the side, and hopefully if we have time, the inlay, right? So let's go ahead and get into building. So the first thing I'm going to start with is a ring rail. If you're building a ring, this is probably how you should start majority of your jobs. So let's choose a finger size 8 and right click. So now I have a ring rail. I can put an outside ring rail by selecting the ring rail and clicking outside, and then it'll put an outside ring rail. So what the outside ring rail does, well, for one, it'll give you the outside shape of the ring, right? That's an obvious. But let's say I put a profile on here and relate it to the outside curve. No matter where I drag this profile, it will never get taller than the outside curve, right? So let's do a profile change. So I will click the little box. Let's select this one. Let's make it about 6 millimeters wide. Because what I'll do, double channel plus 0.5 channel wall. So on each side you have 0.5, so that's 1.5, right? So now I have essentially 4.5 millimeters to play. So I'll do 2 millimeter stones and let's see how that looks. Okay, so down here at the bottom, I have activate auto sweep. If I select that, it will automatically sweep around both curves. What's cool, if I add another profile and adjust, it will automatically adjust to that profile as well. But I don't want to, so let's just keep one up at the top. I am going to adjust the profile a bit. I can do that with the profile editor. If I select the little edit, I can come here and pull these points, and you will see the model actually live updates. So it'll give you a peek before it's finished, before you actually accept. There we go. So I can hit check, and now that profile is saved. So I can right click, and now I essentially have a band, right? So now, just like other softwares, you can extract isocurve. So a cool thing that we did with this software, you can now extract isocurves at an angle, right? So if you want to put stones that come across, you can do so. For this design, we'll just do it east and west. All right, let's pull it right there. Right click, so now I have a curve. Let's go ahead and put gems on that curve. So selecting the line, I can come under the gems tab and select gem on curve. So as you can see, it put gems in here. What I'm going to do is relate them to the actual band. So right now you can see they're a little angled too much. So if I can select target object and then select the top surface of the shank, you will see they are now parallel to that shank. Okay, so let's pull them down to where we need them. I'll go about 3/4. As you're pulling these down, if you hold shift, it'll automatically snap as well. So that looks pretty good. So let's bring them down into the surface. And we can right click. So now I have the gems on my band. I need to cut the channel, right? So let's go to cutters, channel cut. Let's go to wireframe so we can see inside of our model. And let's make sure the width is okay. I like doing 110. You know, not all diamonds are, or not all stones are perfectly 2 millimeters. So this extra 10% will give you some variation in that. So, all right. So if I right click, I now have a channel and some stones. I want to go ahead and mirror those over to the other side, right? So I select what I want, go to transform. Up here under mirror, you see we have dynamic mirror. So I can select that. So right now it's mirroring over the Y axis, so it's just on top of each other. So I need to untoggle that and toggle the X axis. That way it goes over the back side. If I right click, I now have both channels, right? So I can go ahead and Boolean that, select the Boolean difference, select my band, and now the channels, and it'll give you a live update, right? So let's right click. Okay. What I'm going to try to do is create a cutout with the profile editor. So let's go ahead, edit the profile editor and go here. So let's see if it'll allow me to do so in a good fashion. Let's adjust it a little bit more. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, so if I right click, you can see everything stayed the same except the inside. In Matrix or Rhino Gold, you would have to have deleted everything essentially. So that's the power of parametric history. All right, so let's go ahead and add our prongs. I can select the stones. Let's go to settings and prong placer. Too close. All right, so let's pull in a little nudge, not that much. And let's increase the prong diameter a bit. And let's drop it down into the surface. Up a little too much. All right, now we can right click. So I can take these prongs and mirror them over to the other side the same way. Select mirror under transform and mirror over the X and not the Y. Okay, so you see I have a pretty simple band. This is nothing too crazy, right? But as I said, the real power behind MatrixGold is the parametric history, right? So let's say your customer likes this design, but wants, let's say, princess stones. So you can see it will automatically update the stones and the prongs, right? So if I right click, let's bring back my channel, mirror to the other side. And solid. Boolean. And then I can rehide this one. So that's if the customer wanted, you know, princess, just to show you some of the power behind MatrixGold. So I'm going to Control Z back to my rounds. Let's say the customer wanted a smaller finger size, right? Let's say they were a 5. I can do that. It adjusts. Now do the same. Bring my channel back, mirror, and Boolean. It works the same way if I wanted to increase the finger size. But let's go back to an 8. Right click. Okay, so now let's go ahead and put the stones on the profiles. So I'm going to extract an isocurve once again. Except now I'm going to put it towards the top of the profile. And I can right click. So same thing, we're going to do gem on curve. And we're going to bring it all the way around. So here you can see the Q-lets are pointing at F4. And this is what I was talking about earlier. You need to give it a target object to look at. That way the Q-let will face that target object. Okay, so let's reduce the size. 1 millimeter should work fine. And let's increase the spacing. All right. Right. Okay, so let's right click. I'm going to select one stone to put a head on. So select head build and use the viewport handles to adjust the head. So let's go ahead and turn the gallery rails off. I can do that under the head builder dynamic command under rail count. Let's just go down to 0. That way I just have the prongs, right? Let's open the angle up a bit. That way it's not looking like it's hanging over the stone. And let's pull it into the metal. Okay, so then I'm going to give it a set look. So now we have that kind of set look, right? So I'm going to select all of these other stones. And I'm just doing this by holding Control and Shift, what's called a sub-select. Okay, so everyone but the one I have the head on. Then I'm going to go under the tools and match attributes. And then I'm going to, at the bottom, select object to take style sheet from. If I select that, it'll show head and select apply. You can see I now have stones on all the sides, right? So I can go ahead, take all of this and mirror over to the other side the same way. Let's turn Y off and X on. And there we go. Okay, so now we need to get creative, right? So now we need to find a way to make the inlay, right? So to be honest, I haven't gotten this far in building the model in practice. So everything from now on is not scripted. So if I mess up, it's not my fault. All right, so let's go ahead, extract another isocurve, except this way I'm gonna turn the angle north and south, right? Okay, so I can right click. So let's go ahead and try a blend curve. Let's select this side and this side. So the idea of what I'm trying to get is a single curve along the ring rail. Okay, so I need to flip the first curve because you can see it's coming around this way. So flip first curve. The second curve is good. 0.5, 0.5, so I can right click. And now I have just a single curve, right? So I can go ahead and sweep that surface. One rail sweep. All right. Let's change that a different color, right? So now I'm going to Smart Flow. So I'm going to select my base, select Auto Base. So now essentially what it did, it took the surface on the inside of the finger rail and just laid it flat, right? Try and get it as good as possible and right click. Let's color this red just because I want to stay organized. Okay. So now I can either extract isocurve from here, and then object on curve is here. So running that, you can see it has mill grain, but if I scroll up and go into the library, I have a bunch of different pieces, right? So let's find one that's similar. I think this one's about the closest we will get. And then let's give it the target object of the surface. So let's pull it all the way across. Now I just need to increase the size, and we can turn it a bit. Let's make them overlap. This isn't the most perfect model, but I think it'll get us there. So let's increase the size a bit more. Okay. So I don't want it to hang off, right? So let's pull it right on the end. And let's make sure this one is right on the end as well. All right, so I can right click. So now we can Smart Flow. Under Transform, it has Smart Flow. We can select that. So at the bottom, select Surface Base. So this will be the base. This will be the destination. Make sure it's going the correct way. So then we got to go back in, open it, and edit, right? So right here, it says Objects to Flow. So I want to select my objects and put them in the box. Let's right click just to see how it came out. And that's pretty close, right? Close enough. So let's go ahead and hide this, and we'll make everything the same color. I'm going to go ahead and gem cut. Select my gems, run gem cutter. So here we have a bunch of settings. What I like to do is select the kebab menu, go to style. When you do that, it'll bring up what's called style sheets. So now we can just do a flat divot. So I need to increase the drop of the base a bit. Let's get in position, pull it down a bit more. There we go. And I can right click. Right, so now I should have cutters everywhere, right? So I can go ahead and Boolean difference. The more geometry that the software has to draw, the heavier load it is on your processor and video card. So the least amount of geometry is always better, right? So for crashes, if you come from Matrix, I'm sure you guys know that Rhino 5 crashes all the time. Rhino will just fall out. So the least amount of geometry it has to draw, the better. Camilla said, what are the big differences between Matrix 9 and Gold? So the biggest difference, obviously the parametric history inside of MatrixGold. Some of the big differences are we implemented a new render studio, which we're about to get into. You can get a much more lifelike render from Cycles, which is the new render. So let's go ahead, select a metal color. I'm going to select Plat Iridium and add material to object. Let's go ahead, select these. We can make these a diamond. Let's select these and we'll make these a sapphire. Okay, now I'm going to select every other one. Let's select these and we'll make these a sapphire. And then we can select the other ones and make these a diamond. Okay, so below we have a resolution. So this is going to be whatever size you need the image to be. And then passes. The number of passes is going to relate to how clear you want the model, right? So the more passes it makes, the clearer the resolution. Okay, so let's select a few of these. We'll go through a couple. Business. So business is a render style. If you apply it and you come here to render, you can kind of see what it'll look like, but we can hit render to see a view of it. So as you can see with the reflections and colors, the lighting is better and you get a much more realistic look. So I'm not going to let it finish, but we're a little over halfway. So let's go ahead and close that. We can come down to Matrix Classic, which will give you the look of Matrix 9 render. So let's zoom in and hit render. So this answers your question from the beginning, Sterling. The render engine is different. It is a path ray tracing now. So it actually sends a pixel out into the metaphorical render room, right? Everything it bounces off of, it relays information back to the camera. So you get better reflections and better looking lighting and stuff like that. So this is the Matrix Classic. It'll give you that legacy Matrix look. And then there's a few fun ones in here. Wet stone, apply that. You can see, looks like you're outside. So if I render, and then there's a bunch of post effects that you can actually put on it. Depth of field is pretty cool. So I can make depth inside the render room focused, and then it fade out just like the human eye. So that's a pretty cool post effect to add. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to give us a shout at Gemvision. We're here to answer all questions, and thank you all for joining. I look forward to seeing you all next week. We will be here same time. Thanks.